pepperoni, lemon zest, eggplant, anchovies, spinach, extra cheese, sausage, udon noodles, basil, salami, cheddar, ricotta, Italian herbs, bell pepper, Edam cheese, tomato sauce, olives, mozzarella, yellow peppers, chicken, ham, artichokes, Napoleon sauce, nutmeg, emmental cheese, leeks. Welcome back everyone to ChaosCraft. This is episode 4 of the series, and today's episode we're going to be working on upgrading and improving some parts of the base, especially here in the snowy village area. In the last episode, we did a little tour around the central area of the SMP, and we also checked out my friend's base up there in the mountain. If you haven't seen that episode yet, I definitely recommend go check it out first because it gives a lot of context of what's happening here and what we're building towards. But for now, let's focus on today. So the main plan for this episode is going to be terraforming the mountains and improving the village area per se. I want to start shaping the terrain so it feels more intentional and more alive instead of just random generated terrain. Along with that, I also want to start planning where the future builds are going to go, both up on the mountains and down here in the village. Because having a clear plan makes everything look more cohesive in the long run. And of course, we'll also be adding vegetation and details to make the area feel more natural and immersive. So yeah, we've got a lot to do today, so let's get started. The first thing I wanted to figure out was what kind of trees I wanted to use around my base. Because let's be honest, vanilla trees are fine, but they're not exactly the most beautiful things ever. They can look a bit plain and repetitive, especially when you're trying to create a detailed custom area like what I'm doing. So I decided to try make my own custom trees. This was mostly experimentation at first, testing shapes, testing proportions, and just getting a feel of how custom trees are actually built. I also watched a few tutorials and picked up some tricks and tips, like how to vary the leaf placement, how to make the trunk look more natural, and how to avoid making the tree look too symmetrical. At first it was rough, but after a few attempts, I started to get the hang of it per se. Once I knew roughly what kind of trees I wanted, it was time to gather the materials. And of course, I had absolutely none of what I needed. The tree design I chose used wood, leaves, and packed mud. And I literally had zero of those materials ready. So it was time to go resource gathering. I had to collect wood, gather tons of leaves, and make packed mud, which meant getting mud, which meant getting water bottles, which meant, yeah, it was a whole process. And honestly, gathering materials is probably one of my least favorite parts of building. It's necessary, yes, but it can be really, really boring, really fast. So, naturally, I got distracted. Instead of continuing to gather materials, I decided to go a little bit on a side quest and make some improvements to the Nether hub. Nether hub in quotation marks. Previously, the Nether portals that led to the end and the central area were in different levels, which made traveling through the hub slower and a little bit less convenient because you had to pass in a really dangerous bridge that wasn't even spawn proof, and you need to go to the other level of the highest level that I put so we can go to other places. It was a big hassle. So I fixed that. I moved the portals so that is on the same level now, which makes navigation way faster and much more efficient. And I also did some spawn proofing in the tunnels so to make sure no mobs would spawn and mess things up while traveling. I experienced that on the first episode when we tried to defeat the Ender Dragon and I would always die every time I crossed the bloody bridge. It's a small change, but it makes a huge difference in everyday use. While working on the Nether hub, I also realized something. I've been using diamond armor and tools for a very long time now, and honestly, it was time for an upgrade. It was time for Netherite. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to record the actual mining process while searching for ancient debris, but I did spend quite a bit of time in the Nether slowly gathering everything I needed. I didn't do it all at once though. Whenever I got bored or tired of gathering other materials or working on building, I would go into the Nether and mine for ancient debris for a bit. It became kind of a side activity that I did over time, and eventually I had enough. I upgraded my armor and tools to Netherite, making them stronger, more durable, and honestly, they just look way cooler to be honest. I just did that so that I didn't have the blue colors. Yeah. I also mined a lot of diamonds to add armor trims and maybe borrowed a few from my friend, but he doesn't need to know that. Those trims cost diamonds and I wanted the armor to look good. Priorities. Caprichos. With that done, it was finally time to return to the main plan, working on the base. I wanted to start placing custom trees and adding vegetation, but then I realized something important. The trees wouldn't look right yet, because the terrain itself wasn't ready. So the mountain wasn't fully shaped, the village layout wasn't fully planned, and placing trees would probably just result of me removing and moving them later, which I didn't want to do. So instead, I decided to postpone the vegetation for now. The smarter move is first to plan the terrain, decide exactly where buildings will go, shape the mountains properly, and create the structure of the area. And once all of that is ready, then we can bring it to life with trees and vegetation. Now, it's time to start shaping this mountain. When I started working on this terraforming, I quickly ran into a bit of a problem. I didn't really know what I wanted the mountain to look like. Usually, when I build something, I already have some kind of inspiration. I'll watch videos from other builders, scroll through YouTube, or look at builds from the Minecraft community to get an idea of shapes, palettes, and styles that I like. That normally helps me visualize what I'm going for before I even start placing the blocks. But this time it was different. The theme I chose, snowy mountain cliffs, was surprisingly hard to find good inspirations for. At least, not the kind that I was looking for. Most of what I found was either very small scale builds or things that I didn't quite match the feeling I wanted for this area. I didn't just want a snowy mountain. I wanted it to feel natural, massive, real. So I ended up doing something I almost never do. I opened up Pinterest. I know, anticlimactic. But now, normally, I don't really use Pinterest for building inspirations. And when I look, and when I do look for inspiration, it's always Minecraft builds. But this time, instead of looking for Minecraft builds, I started looking at real life, real snowy mountains, real cliffs, real landscapes, and honestly, it completely changed how I approach this. Looking at real mountains helped me understand how the terrain actually flows, how cliffs aren't perfectly smooth, how there's variations, uneven shapes, layers, and depth. Some areas are steep and some are softer. Some have patches, vegetation breaking up the snow, and yeah, it made everything feel more authentic. And it was very different experience for me because instead of copying or adapting another Minecraft build, I was interpreting real life and translating it into Minecraft blocks. It was harder, but it was also way more fun. Now, I didn't terraform the entire mountain right away. Instead, I focused on just one side first. I mainly wanted to block out the shape, just the silhouette per se. No details, no fancy block mixing, no texturing, just the overall form of the cliffs. I wanted to see how the mountain would look structurally before committing to anything more permanent. Because once you start adding details and colors, it gets harder to change the big shapes. So this was more of a test run. I stepped back a few times, flew around it, look at it at different angles, tried to figure out if the scale felt right, if the cliffs had enough variation, and the mountain actually looked intentional instead of randomly generated. And honestly, even without the details, I'm pretty happy with the direction Right now, it's very rough. It's basically just the foundation. The forms are there, the depth is there, but there's no real texture yet. No artistic liberties, no refined block palettes. Just the basic structure that everything else will sit on later. I haven't added the proper detailing, the snow layering, or the color variation that will really make it pop. That will come later. For now, this is just about making sure the mountain reads well from the distance, that the silhouette feels strong and natural. Once the shape is solid, that's when I'll go back and start adding vegetation, gradients, rock variation, and all the smaller details that bring it to life. So this isn't the finished product, it's a blueprint, and it's just the beginning. Now that I finally understand how I want these mountains to look, and I figure out the style and the shape I'm going for, I think it's time to move on to the next big step, planning the village. Because right now, we technically have a village area, but it doesn't really feel like a village yet. It feels like terrain with potential. And I want this place to actually feel alive. So here's the plan. In total, I want this village to have 16 buildings. Yeah, 16. The idea is that each building will represent one of the villagers' professions. So instead of just random houses, every structure will have a purpose. For example, we already have the fisher hut done. So that covers the fisherman. But we'll also need a church for the cleric, a library for the librarian, a blacksmith, a butcher, a cartographer. Basically, one building for every job a normal villager can have. I think that'll make the village feel structured and intentional instead of just decorative. Now, some of these buildings will be below the mountains, forming the main village area per se, and some of them I want to place up the mountain itself, maybe overlooking the village, and maybe build into the cliffs. I don't know. We'll see. Although looking at the mountain right now, I'm starting to question if it might be a little too small to fit all 16 buildings. But you know what? We're gonna try it anyway. Worst case scenario, we adapt. There's still a lot of trees that needs to be removed before we properly place everything. But I think that's something we'll deal with as we go. No need to clear everything out right now if we're not even sure where the buildings will sit. So instead of mass tree destruction, let's start planning placement first. Now, as for priorities, the buildings I want to work on are the farm, the library, the stonemason, and the woodcutter. Those four feel essential. The farm will help anchor the lower village area and add life and movement. The library is going to be important both visually and functionally. The stonemason and woodcutter also make it a lot sense with the whole mountain setting. They fit the theme perfectly. I know that the woodcutter, there's no profession for the woodcutter, but I think it's really nice to have. So what I'm going to do now is start making out where these four buildings will go, testing positions, checking spacing, and making sure they flow well with the terrain. And once those four are built, that's when this place will really start to feel like a village. So let's start laying things out and see how it comes together. And I think that's a pretty good place to end today's episode. We managed to completely reshape part of the mountain, figure out the style that actually feels natural and realistic, and most importantly, we finally started planning what this village is going to become. It's still really early in the process, but now we have direction. We know the theme, we know the structure, and we know the goal. 16 fully detailed buildings, each one representing a different villager profession. Some just added because. That's going to take a while. But honestly, I'm really excited about it. The mountain is starting to feel alive, and once this building starts going up and the vegetation gets added properly, this place is going to look completely different from how it started. Next episode, we'll probably focus on finishing those priority builds, the farm, the library, the stonemason, the woodcutter, and start giving the village some real personality. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new around here, and let me know in the comments what kind of details you'd like to see in the village. Alright, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode of ChaosCraft. Bye bye!